Welcome to the Hunting Beast Report, a live video podcast with Dan Infalt and host Jeremy Gillespie.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Stealth Outdoors. The off-season's a great time to rehab your gear, so head on over to Stealth Outdoors at www.stealthoutdoors.com to pick up some climbing stick wraps, cam buckle covers, platform cable wraps, or stealth strip rolls for all of your miscellaneous silencing needs. Today's show is also made possible by Hunting Beast Gear, innovators in mobile hunting gear and the designers of the Beast Sticks and Beast Stand. Check out the latest products at www.huntingbeastgear.com. And now, on to the podcast. All right, we're live, joined as always by Dan Infalt and today's special guest, Shane Simpson. Shane, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing good. Appreciate you jumping on here. We're going to have a discussion about tracking today, and if we have time, some early season tactics as well. Dan, what's new in your neck of the woods?
Not much. Not much at all. Just been getting my gear ready and studying maps and working my life away.
Yeah. Well, I had an interesting weekend here. I'm going to share the screen here. I was out. We were going to go paddleboarding, and it was pretty cold. I was just south of the Montana border in Wyoming on the Beartooth Highway, if anyone's ever been in the neighborhood, and ran into some grizzly bears. These pictures are from the car, just in case anybody's wondering. But it was kind of neat. We saw the bears getting ready to cross the road, and we stopped. There was a pull-off right there, thankfully, and the bears end up crossing about 5 feet in front of the car. So got some really cool photos, and not something you see every day. So the real funny part was we were about 2 miles from where we were going to paddleboard in a trailhead that we did an 8-mile hike on last weekend. So I might have almost been a grizzly bear bait there.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I wouldn't even like stop my car. You could give them a cookie.
Yeah.
You should have just got out and give them some cookies and stuff like I do with cookies.
Yeah, we found out right before we jumped on that Shane is not a grizzly bear fan, so I'm not a big one either, Shane, for whatever that's worth. But anyways, Shane, for people
don't bother me. I think you give them enough room and they leave you alone.
Yeah.
If you stay out of bear territory, they'll leave you alone as well.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Well, for people that are listening, if anybody plans to hunt Montana, a lot of people don't know that the range has really expanded in the last 5 years. So anywhere, if you took a line down the center of the state, east to west, anywhere in the western half of the state, you could run into a bear now. I mean, they're all over. Even in the prairies, like a lot of people don't know that either. Grizzly's natively a prairie animal, and they're reclaiming the prairie. So they showed up in a few places in the last year or two that I hunted where they weren't even 5 years ago. So there's they're moving east, folks. There's some speculation that they're going to end up in the Badlands in North Dakota in the next 20 to 30 years. So we'll see if that happens. But anyways, enough of that. Shane, thanks for joining us. For people that don't know you already, I would imagine a lot of people do. You have a very popular YouTube channel, Shane Simpson Hunting, with over 50,000 subscribers, and ShaneSimpsonHunting.com. But give us some background, who you are, how you got into hunting, what you're doing these days.
I'll try to make it brief, but it's a long story. But
Sure.
Born and raised in South Carolina. Basically we had a small chunk of land down there that we owned when I was growing up. My family owned. Basically just walked back in the woods and self-taught myself how to hunt. I shot a lot of things I probably shouldn't have, Tweety birds and whatnot, but we didn't know any better back then. But anyway, got into turkey hunting, discovered it early on, fell in love with it. Bow hunting for deer, fell in love with it. I put down my gun for deer when I was in my teens, and never looked back. Moved to Minnesota about 15, 16 years ago, and I've been filming my hunts since I was about 14. Bought a camcorder when I was that age and would film my family, and just been doing it ever since. When I moved up here, it really took off because turkey season in South Carolina was a month long, and you could hunt the whole month and kill 5 birds. I moved to Minnesota, and you could only hunt one particular season, like 1 week period. and get one bird. And I'm like, yeah, that's not enough turkey hunting for me. So started looking for people to let me tag along with them, film their hunts, and ended up, putting all that stuff on my YouTube channel, and it's grown since then. So here we are today.
Yeah, one of the things I really enjoy on your YouTube is what you call the Cali Chronicles. For people that don't know, Cali is Shane's tracking dog, and that's what we want to talk to you about today. So let's start out, Shane. How many tracks, if you had to guess, obviously approximately, how many tracks have you been on Lifetime now?
In the big scheme of things, it's not a whole lot compared to other trackers. Probably a lot, when the average person looks at it and says, so I'm going to do some math here real quick. It's got to be about 250 tracks, 300 tracks, somewhere in that area. I don't do a whole lot, like 35 or 40 tracks a season. I'm trying to save a lot of time for my deer hunting.
Sure.
And my personal hunting. And there's some of my fellow trackers up here, they take 200 and 300 tracks a year. So they get a lot more reps than I do. But yeah, I'm content with the number I do.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that's important when we're talking about dog tracking specifically is like the importance of a clean track versus a dirty track. So could you explain to people what that is and what people should do if they have a questionable shot and they're considering a dog?
Yeah, so a clean track is a perfectly clean track is one where you didn't even track at all. You shot a deer, you're in the stand. You actually, sometimes they call the tracker from the deer stand and get their advice, and we tell them just slip on out of there real quietly. That's a clean track. A dirty track is, and it varies the amount of dirtiness to it, I guess. The hunter's walking, trailing the deer, walking right in the trail. He's picking up scent molecules from that deer. The wounded odor that a deer puts off, he's picking up those scent molecules. He's picking up blood on his shoes. And then once he starts walking around the woods, he's disturbing the woods and he's depositing those scent molecules of that deer. So when the dog comes in there now, the dog's got to work out which one is the actual deer and which one is the person tracking the scent of that deer around. And then you can get extreme ones where they searched, got their buddies out there and searched throughout the night, waited overnight, came back next morning, grid searched some more, 5, 6 people out there, really disturbing the woods, disturbing the scent trail. And that's a really dirty track. And so that's the difference between the two. And it just basically hurts the dog's ability to efficiently follow that deer. On a clean track, I can put my dog on it and we can be over top of that deer in 30 seconds. A dirty track, we may spend an hour, half hour to an hour with the dog trying to work out that grid search before we break it free of it. And then the track's clean again where the people haven't walked.
And let's say I put a questionable shot on a deer, one where I don't hear or see it go down. What's your best advice then? Like if I was to call you and say, hey, Shane, I hit one, I haven't muddied up the track. What should I do? Like,
well, I'm going to ask you, what did the deer do? Where did you hit it? What was the deer's reaction? If you're bow hunting, did you smell the arrow? Did you retrieve the arrow? Did we get a pass through? There's a litany of questions I'm going to ask to not only to determine where you hit it, but, figure out wait times. Number one, when should I track the deer? Or do you even need a dog out there? I've talked, some hunters and a lot of trackers do this. We feel pretty confident that the deer is probably not, dead, not far away. And we'll tell them like, here, this is what you do. Just track the deer yourself, stay off the blood trail, stay off to one side. And you'll probably find your deer another 100 yards, 150 yards away. If it starts looking questionable, just mark last blood and back out. And at that point, we'll come in and look for it. So we've helped some hunters, in that regard. But, you're looking at, was it a double lung? Do you think it was a good hit? And we think the deer's dead already. We're probably going to track it as soon as we're available. If we think it's farther back, liver or guts, we're going to give that deer more time. There's so many variables, but the easiest way, like they say, when in doubt, back out. That's the easiest slogan to make a judgment. As soon as you start having troubles with the trail, you're not so sure about the shot. Getting a dog in there is something you should be thinking about. And, a lot of people are worried about the cost or the inconvenience. Most trackers, especially up here in Minnesota and Wisconsin, just track for tips. We don't charge a fee. If you want to toss $50 our way or $100, that's fine. We want to help find deer. The trackers enjoy doing it just like you enjoy hunting. We enjoy tracking.
Dan, you're getting a lot of comments about the gun show over there tonight.
Gun show.
Yeah, your tank top.
Oh,
That's a popular one.
it was just hot out today.
Yeah. So Dan, I've been rambling on here. You
Just
got
for,
any questions for Shane?
One thing I want to say about the tank top is whenever I'm not wearing pants, I wear this tank top. So
Oh God.
put that image in your head.
Yeah, this is the PG show, Dan. PG.
How bad are your longest tracks? How far do you think you've tracked deer?
I've had a couple a mile or more. Some of my fellow trackers here in Minnesota have tracked deer much farther, 2 or 3 miles. I think one of them tracked deer 7 miles. I usually run out of real estate before then because I live around the metro, the Twin Cities. Properties are much smaller. We run into a property line and then it's either posted or the landowner won't give us permission. In Wisconsin, you have to ask for permission for every property. You don't have to have your land posted. If you go, you got to have permission to get across it. Minnesota, we don't have that. As long as the land's not posted, as long as it's not ag land, we can continue tracking. But most times, out of respect, I'll go look for the landowner because I don't want them finding me with a dog. A lot of people don't like someone with a dog going through their property. The dog's on a leash, but I guess to answer your question, some of these tracks I've done a mile or more, and deer that you would have thought should be dead within 100 yards or less. I tracked one. It was double lung liver. Tracked it 1.3 miles. I tracked one just under 1,600 yards. That was double lung and heart shot. Now it didn't go through the chambers of the heart, but it lacerated the muscle of the heart. And those deer lived for more than 12 hours and went that far.
That's something I wanted to talk to you about too, because I know a lot of times you stick around to watch the gutting to see exactly where the arrow went through and kind of do an autopsy. And it's been my experience just on a lot less tracks and not with the dog, but some of those back of the lung, like very front of the liver, that's not like a very vascular area. So is that something you see regularly, or has it got to hit just the right spot for that to be a long track job?
If I'm gonna hit back, I'd rather hit the liver. Like you said, the lungs aren't very vascular, and I've seen center punch double lungs deer live that actually lived a couple weeks after it was shot. Got photos of it breeding a doe in front of the camera, and you can see the wound like right through the pocket there, the vital V. It looked like it's a wonder it didn't hit the heart. But the liver is a very lethal organ to hit in most cases. And if you ever cut open a liver, next time you shoot a deer, take the liver out and do a cross section of it. You'll see little tunnels all through it where blood flows through it. Some of them are bigger, like my size of my pinky. Some of them are real small. So if you hit one of those bigger tunnels in the liver, it's like hitting an artery. That deer is dead in seconds. It's spraying blood. But if you hit one of the other areas, smaller areas, that deer is going to take 12, 15, 16 hours before it loses enough blood or it goes septic and from the bacteria and whatever, all the dirty stuff from the liver. The back of the lungs, you're going to puncture the diaphragm, but I'd like to get at least 2 lungs. One lung deer, we have a hard time recovering those deer. They can survive off of one lung. And the advice a lot of people say is if you can get on a 1 lung deer with a dog and push that deer and continue to track it and push it, it can't maintain enough oxygen in its body on that one functioning lung to carry on, and it'll eventually just from lack of oxygen and exhaustion, you'll come up on it, and then you can dispatch it. But it's the farther up in the lungs, the more blood vessels, more vascular, like you said, and you'll get more hemorrhaging, and the deer will die quicker. Plus, they're not going to have air to breathe.
Right. Dan, what do you got going on your end?
So, one thing I think we should mention, and it's kind of basic, but I can remember, a lot of far back hits in my lifetime, guts or liver. And both of those, like you said, are pretty much always fatal because if the bleeding out doesn't kill them, the toxic poisoning does.
Yeah.
But in all cases with a far back hit, if you don't hit the up in the lungs, or if you quarter back into the guts and liver, those deer don't want to go far. They hurt real bad. You see them hunch up. They often just walk off because they hurt so bad. And they go usually a short distance. They don't bleed well if they got guts plugging up the hole. But if you jump that deer early, I've seen those deer go a long distance. And when you were talking about long distances earlier, I was thinking about one deer way back in 1990 that I shot, and I shot it through the liver, and it only went a short distance and looked like it went down, and I had to go over and take a peek. I was younger and stupider, and the deer got up and looked like it was going to just about drop, but then I backed off. The next day in snow, I tracked that thing 5 miles to where it was dead. Yeah. And it would have been laying there if I would have just waited probably 4 hours or 5 hours, or at least, or overnight. But,
yeah. If I shoot one in the guts or back there, way back, or if someone shoots one way back there, most of the time it's almost 100% recovery with a dog, like 90 some odd percent. I mean, it's way up there. Especially a lot of times the hunter doesn't have, blood to go on. And so they don't muck up the track too much, or they know they're in trouble. And so they just back out and call a dog. And we have high odds of recovery on that. If I was hunting and there was no dog available for me, I knew there wasn't one, and I'm out hunting in the middle of nowhere, and I shoot one in the guts, I'm just going to leave. I'll come back tomorrow morning, and my deer is probably going to be, like you said, 150, 200 yards in the direction I saw it going. And what actually kills the deer is not really the stuff that comes out of the stomach and the liver. It's the deer's immune system trying to fight that. And the immune system starts attacking the deer's own organs, and basically its immune system kills it. Kills its, destroys the organs, and then the deer dies. But like you said, they don't go very far. And if you bump them, then they go much farther.
Yeah, I would imagine that the ones that you did have a problem with you said something like 90% recovery, but the ones you did have a problem with, I would bet every one of those somebody tracked too early. Yeah,
that's the number one cause for needing a dog, or the reason they couldn't recover it, because they jumped it too soon, tracked it too soon and jumped it. I even tracked for a guy one time, and got out there, and he said he had jumped it twice. And I said, well, you should have backed out after the first time. It's going to happen. Sometimes you think you put a good hit on it, and you go out there and track, and you jump it. Well, if you jump a deer, back out minimum of 12 hours before you go track again. But this guy said he jumped it twice. And then while we're tracking, we got to the first point where he jumped it, then the second wound bed, and we were going along. And then he said, okay, here's the third place I jumped it. I said, oh, you jumped it 3 times. I said, at what point do you not realize that the deer is not dead? You're just running it all over the countryside. We never did recover that deer. After the third bed, my dog tracked for a ways, and then she just couldn't figure out where it went from there. They typically don't go far, like you said, and if you just leave them there, that's where you'll find them the next morning. There was a point I was going to make, and I forgot what it was, but maybe it'll come to me here in a minute.
Well, while you're thinking about that, Shane, we've got some questions in the chat, and we usually take those at the end, but a lot of people are asking fixed or mechanical, and that's a good segue. I'm going to share, and I apologize to people. This is a little bit hard to read, I'm sure, on the phone or in the live. This is Shane's website. So ShaneSimpsonHunting.com, and we're on the tracking data tab. 2 things. Let's talk about the data real quick, but let's also talk about Tracker, TRAKR, which is an app that you co-developed. And this data on your website is 2022 tracking data collected by the Minnesota Tracking Dogs. And I'm going to try to zoom in here. And I'll read some of this because I think it's going to be hard to read for people that are viewing on the small screen. So you got things on here like recovery rates, track quality, track distance, pass through, but you've also got compound bow stats. So fixed blade, mechanicals, pass throughs, arrow weight. So give me your opinion and your experience on fixed blade versus mechanical, and arrow weight seems to always be a big thing. So what are your thoughts there as a tracker?
Well, it's evolving. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Early on, I was straight up fixed blades the way to go. Mechanicals are trash. I've had some bad experiences with them. I'm still using a fixed broadhead, and I'm using a heavier arrow than I used to. What I'm starting to see now, this data you see here is what we collected through a request form. It was like the predecessor of the app. The app does all that for us now.
Okay.
And in our Minnesota Tracking Dogs group, we collect all this information. When hunters would request a tracking dog, they would put in there what equipment. It was all optional answers. Like if you just wanted to say I shot it with a bow, that's all you had to do. But we gave them the option to give out more details, and so we collected that pass-through rates and this and that. And what I was starting to notice a trend was, each has their pros and cons. Fixed get pass-throughs a lot more than mechanical broadheads do. And your recovery rate for a pass-through is much higher than a non-pass-through. But on the flip side, if you don't get a pass-through, a mechanical is far superior than a fixed blade on a non-pass-through shot. And so you have to kind of weigh your option there. We're looking at the heavy arrow debate. I've never really had a problem with getting pass-throughs. Every deer I've shot, just about, except for 4 I shot with a mechanical, I got pass-throughs. And I think a lot of it has to do with people tuning their arrows properly. And I don't know if my bow was tuned properly back when I tried those mechanicals. I was younger and didn't know as much about tuning the bow. Nowadays with cell phones, I can video it in slow motion. I paper tune my stuff. My arrows are shooting straight as a nail coming out of my bow. And I think that would help a lot of hunters more than the broadhead that they're shooting. Now, there are some broadheads out there that I think are absolutely garbage as far as when it comes to penetration. I think the design is flawed.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Sure.
I think it's those dead meats and those meat eaters or whatever those things. They have the way they're shaped and with that shoulder. So many of those broadheads we track for. It's just crazy, and they don't get pass-throughs. And I know there's a lot of people like, oh, I've never had an issue with that. But you're one person with your 3 deer you shot. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of tracks that we've collected. And the rages, we get a lot of tracks for rage, and that's just a popular mechanical head. We get some tracks for fixed as well. I would say, though, and I'm going to go ahead and put this out now before I forget, because people will ask me, if I had to recommend a mechanical, right now it's the Sever 1.5. I've been thinking about using it. I very seldom get tracks requests for it. It's like low on the totem pole of requests for tracks, and maybe just not many people use it. I think it's a fairly popular broadhead, but on the few tracks I've been on, they've gotten pass-throughs. They've just gotten great damage on it, on like terrible hits is what it ended up being. Like it went in and went through the ribs and came out the chest and didn't leave much blood because the hide and hair was covered. Just terrible shots. But we still recovered those deer, and it still did a lot of damage. And the broadhead looked, immaculate afterwards. And it's a very stout, very well-built broadhead. I know my buddy Garrett Prawl has been experimenting with them the last couple seasons. He shot deer with them. He is, giving the thumbs up to me that it's something worth trying. And so I'm thinking about actually trying it this year and seeing how it performs.
Is that a 2 or 3 blade? Do they come in both?
It's a 2 blade. And it has where the blades kind of come out and kind of lock and swivel to go around bone and stuff. I don't know about all that. It's just, to me, the appeal is it's very well constructed, nice. It's built like a tank. And there's some review videos on YouTube. You can watch them, test them out, and that broadhead seems to outperform all the others, or hold up better than all the others out there.
And what about arrow weight? You said you kind of evolved there. What do you think about arrow weight?
Yeah, I went to a heavier arrow. I haven't seen a lot of benefit personally. I have a long draw length, and I was shooting 405 grain arrows, 73 draw weight, and a 30-inch draw length. And so I'm getting good speed out of my arrow anyway. So I don't know that I actually needed to go up in weight. I ended up all the way up to like 660 grains. I backed it down to 550. I think this year I'm gonna go back into the low to mid 400s and start shooting those again. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I still got to put a plan together as far as what I'm going to be shooting this year and shoot some of those arrows.
And I like to ask this question to everybody that does shoot a heavier broadhead. So since I moved out west, I'm from Michigan originally, but I live in Montana now, and do some antelope hunting. I do some elk hunting. So I want kind of one setup, right? Like if it was just antelope, I'd shoot a light arrow. If it was just elk, I'd probably shoot a little heavier. So I'm around 460, 470. So I still got a decent trajectory, but a little extra energy. What would you, where do you think you'd end up if you were hunting Western animals more often, you know, where you might have a longer shot?
No, I'm not going to take a longer shot.
Okay.
I shoot about 40 yards and in. That's with my bow and my shotgun. I self-regulated for turkey hunting with my shotgun for 40 yards and in. Same with my bow. I use the same setup for turkey and deer with my bow. So if I go out west, I'm just going to have to get within 40 yards of them, or I'm not going to be shooting.
Dan, what are you shooting for arrow and broadhead these days?
It's about 500 grains. It's I use a full length arrow. We cut like a 16th off the end of it just to trim it. I got ape arms. My knuckles drag. I'm still part caveman. I'm using the G5 Strikers. They look like a crappy broadhead, but they perform awesome. And I always get pass-throughs. And I shoot a very light bow. I only shoot 50 pounds because of a shoulder injury. And, you know, it performs well. I don't perform well, but it does. Just the other day, I was at Pagel's shop, or his house. Retired, so he doesn't work for the public anymore. I don't know. Shane probably doesn't know who Pagel is, but he's the guy who owned Forge Bows. He retired and put that out of business. But he's been a good friend of mine for years. And I told him, I know he's a wealth of knowledge. The guy's hunted all over the country. He's just he knows everything about archery. It's incredible. I told him about my problem. What my problem is that when I look at a sight and I look at my target, I lose focus on one of them. And usually I'll be seeing 3 or 4 pins for one pin while I'm looking at my target. And I keep missing and hitting deer bad. I had him actually go through this whole thing with testing me. And he found a lens that worked. And he put a lens inside of my peep. And my God, did that make a difference. I'm shooting like
called the
tax
rectifier. It's called a rectifier.
That's exactly like that. Yeah. Yeah, it was actually the worst lens they had. I should probably get glasses one of these days. These aren't actually glasses. These are just, I go around to all the lost and founds and find one that works. That's where I get my glasses. So I should probably, you know, I pay for insurance for eyes. I should probably actually use it one of these days.
Yeah, you're probably making them worse.
But I can't wear glasses.
Dan, here's a quick tip for you. I had to use cheaters also, and I'll send you a link later. You can get them on Amazon. They transition from the magnification you need to read and see your phone to no magnification up here. And so I can wear those glasses and actually see normally looking out and driving. And I'm like you though. I mean, I've had trouble in the past where the pen looks blurry to me, and I, you know, so far it hasn't affected my shooting. Instead of it looking like a finite point in front of me, it's just a touch soft in its focus. I guess that eventually, if it continues to get worse, right now I have my cheaters are very low magnification. If it gets worse, I'm gonna have to get LASIK or something, or wear contacts, or I'm gonna be missing like you, or shooting bad like you.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, last year I shot one of the deer I shot and didn't recover in Iowa. It's about 150-inch buck. It came in to about 10 yards, and because it was getting close, I drew before it came in. And I was watching the deer with my pin on its chest, waiting for it to just give me the perfect shot because it was kind of quartering to me. And while I'm looking at it, I waited till it turned quartering away, put that pin right behind the shoulder, and I watched that arrow go right through the heart. And we never found that deer. And then I went back and watched the film, and it wasn't anything that I saw. The deer turned and was quartering to me, not away from me, when I shot. And I swear to God, I saw it quartering away because I was focused on that pin. I think the deer was blurry and I wasn't seeing what I thought I was seeing. You know what I mean? And that's what I got to fix.
Yeah, but you still think you still think you made a great shot though, right? You're.
No, I didn't.
Oh,
when we
okay.
watched the video,
Oh, okay.
when we went back and watched the video after tracking, because we couldn't figure out why I couldn't find this thing, that deer turned to me and was quartering to me. When I shot it in the shoulder, not, but I watched the arrow go right behind the shoulder, things quartering away, perfect shot. And that is not reality, because the camera don't lie. You know what I mean? But
exactly.
So I'm not seeing reality when I'm trying to watch a pin and a deer at the same time. I can't focus on two things. So I'm really farsighted. So if I look at the pin, I'm not seeing the deer. I'm seeing a blurry animal.
Yeah.
If you're looking at this new peep, I look through it and I can see the pin, I can see the target, I can see everything. And the trouble with it is when I had that problem, even when I'm shooting a target, it's not a problem because I can focus on the target, then I focus on the pin, and nothing moved. You know what I mean? So my shooting would still be okay, but it wouldn't be perfect because of the blur. But now my groups have come way in. I'm shooting really good. I'm really impressed by it.
Well, good. Hopefully nothing but bullseyes this fall, Dan.
Yeah. Now I got no excuses.
Yeah. Shane, you mentioned Tracker, and it's an app. Let's get into that real quick. I'm going to pull up a screen here. So if you're on Shane's website on the tracking page, there's a link here, and this is where the link takes you. So talk to us about Tracker, the app, what it is, what it does, why it was created.
Well, I can give you I can tell you why it was created, but then I can give you an example of why it's going to come in handy for you deer hunting this year or any year when you need a tracking dog. So in Minnesota, I'm one of the admins for the Minnesota Tracking Dogs. The group has grown to, I don't know, 40 or 50 trackers now. Some of them are like die hard into it and doing a lot of tracks. Some of them just casual trackers, and some of them in between. But every year, we got a Facebook group, and people would, come to our Facebook page. They're requesting a tracker. We didn't post it publicly. If someone posted on there, it had to be approved. But what we would do is just contact the hunter, so that, you didn't want to get, we try to eliminate that social media shaming. Oh, you need a dog. You need to learn to shoot better, that kind of stuff. So they would, in private, we would handle those calls, and we would dispatch a tracker to them or put them in touch with a tracker. That right there was a lot of work, especially when we got to the rut and when gun season came in. The calls and text messages, emails, messages to our page just got crazy. And as a tracker, try to track, or when I'm at work, I'm one of the admins. I'm trying to, myself and a couple of other admins, we're trying to, gather this information and get it to the right tracker, whoever's in the area, whoever's available. So we decided to build a website, not only for our group, just to showcase what we do and have, a source for people to get information and contact us, but a way to kind of handle those tracks better. So we created a forum on our website. Anytime someone would post in a group or a Facebook group, hunting group, that needed a tracking dog, the public quickly learned to give them a link to our submission page on our website. Submit, put your name, the details about your hunt, what you shot, when you shot it, what you shot it with, all that stuff. And an email blast went out to the admins in Minnesota, and then we would, divvy those out. Everything's already collected, so we didn't have to make a phone call, and we would find a tracker for it. That still required some work, but that was what gave kind of the idea. I already had the idea, but I guess the submission form on the website was the proving grounds to make sure that this was viable. We decided to go ahead and build an app and let the app do that for us. And then the app could be nationwide. So we were just kind of doing that in Minnesota. So now we could expand nationwide. Actually, it's available globally. There's trackers in Canada. There's a couple people in Europe that signed up for it because tracking's big over there as well. But that was kind of how the app got started. And what we're doing with the app is not only trying to make it efficient for you to find a tracker in your area, but a good tracker. When you go on Facebook and you say, I need a tracking dog, and somebody says, oh, I know so-and-so, they they found a couple of deer for me in the past, or somebody else claimed to be a tracker, and I charge $200 to come out, and they really don't have a trained dog, but you don't know that. So we're vetting our trackers on here. They have to be proven, they have to be tested, or like a state network, for instance, let's say Illinois Tracking Deer Trackers Network. They work with us and vet and give me the approval on trackers, and they say, okay, yeah, we know this guy. He's got a great dog. He's a great tracking team, and we'll approve him for the app. So when you get on the app and your request goes out, it's going to proven teams. Now, we also have provisional teams on there as well, but it clearly states that they're a provisional team. They're maybe new to tracking. This is an opportunity to get somebody out there if a veteran team is unavailable. And they're not allowed to charge. They can take tips, but the provisional teams can't charge. But to go back to a perfect example where this app's going to come in handy, we have about 1,500 trackers on it right now, 1,300 roughly 1,300 verified proven tracking teams, and another 200 or 300 provisional teams, and then a lot of people waiting in the wings. Drones will be added this year. We are actually building that portion on the app now. They will be vetted just like dogs are. They got to have certain requirements they got to meet, and and we'll get some tracking stats from them, or recovery stats from them, and anyway, so I'm getting off subject here. We're trying to provide a spot for people to get a resource to get trackers when you need them, and the service is totally free. We're going to try and keep it that way for hunters and trackers to use. We're trying to cover the expense of the app with the analytics that people can subscribe to. I just added some apparel to the website. If you want to help support us building this app, because it's extremely expensive, maybe subscribe to the analytics or buy a hoodie or a t-shirt or something. That'll help us, and that'll help us keep the app free. But let me tell you a quick story. So Dan, you were talking about you lost a deer last year. I lost one also last year, and I thought it was a great hit, and I had video of it, but the video was from an action camera. It was low quality, but it still looks like when I zoom in my editing program, it looks like I hit where I thought I did. Like right, slightly quartering away, right behind the leg here, back of the right lung, exited through the middle or towards closer to the front of the left lung. The deer jumped, made a big brrr as it ran off, blood poured everywhere. I took my time. I thought the deer was going to be laying there dead 50 or 60 yards away. I had my buddy Ryan hunting with me. I texted him, told him to stay in the tree, and we'll track the deer when he's done hunting. 2 or 3 hours later, when he got done hunting, we started to track this deer. Ended up tracking it about 300 yards, and it went through an open area for a ways. So that's why I continued tracking that far. And when we got back into the thicker cover, we didn't go very far, and we found a puddle of blood where the deer stood there and bled. And Ryan was like, "Oh, that's a good thing there." I said, "No, that's terrible. Whenever I see a puddle of blood after a long blood trail, that's a bad sign. A lot of times we don't recover those deer."
Why is that, you think?
A lot of times it ends up being like maybe a one lung and it exited out of the brisket, or maybe the arrow rode under the leg and never entered the chest cavity and came out of the brisket, and the deer ran it and left blood and then stood there, and the blood just kind of poured out of the brisket area, and the deer survives. But the arrow had blood tip to tail. It didn't look like it deflected. It went straight through and went into the ground. The deer actually ran into the arrow after it went through it. It kicked and ran into the arrow, was stuck in the ground, and pushed it up and broke the lighted knot. Everything told me that it was a great hit and the deer should be dead. I backed out at that point, and it was so I shot it that morning. I started trying to find a tracker. I actually had a tracking friend back here in Minnesota that was going to drive out there to track for me. And it was like a 10 or 11 hour drive to get where I was hunting. And I was like, "No, you don't need to drive all the way out here. I'll see if I can find someone locally." We didn't have anybody on the app really in Nebraska. There's just a couple of trackers. They were in southern Nebraska. And so we're hoping as more trackers come about, we can get some more in the areas where we need them. But let's just back up and pretend that this is before the app was available in areas where we have 100 trackers in states. And so I knew I had to put a post out there, or looking on social media, and I found someone that claimed to be a tracker, and called them up, and I asked the person, they got any recoveries? Yeah, we got a few, and had them come out there and paid them to come out there. And being a tracker, I knew exactly what I should be looking for. And it was clear soon after they got out there, they weren't trackers. They're looking around in the wound bed. We did continue tracking earlier before they got back out there another 40 yards and found a wound bed, and then we backed out for good. But it was late that evening when the dog came out there and had the dog around the wound bed. And I was like, what are you looking for? Oh, I'm looking for blood going out of the wound bed so I know which way to start the dog. I was like, the dog should be able to figure that out.
Right.
Basically, I wasted an hour behind this dog. He's just kind of bouncing around, his birding around, looking for stuff. And I said, okay, I've had enough. This ain't working. We're just a waste of money at this point. And, because I got somebody off of social media that wasn't vetted. And that's what we're hoping the app will cure for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a similar experience in Michigan. It might have been, I don't want to give the guy too hard of a time, and obviously I'm not going to mention his name or anything, but it might have been more of what you're calling a provisional tracker, where the dog was just really young and hadn't been on many tracks. And same thing. It was just like, you could tell that he was inexperienced.
Yeah. But did you hire them through the app or?
No. This was years ago.
Okay. And so we're hoping, like with the app, see, when I got this tracker last year, I was under the impression this was a trained tracking dog, and it had recoveries and it should know what it's doing. And if you hire someone through the app and it says provisional, you know what you're getting, and you don't have to, you can tip them, but you don't have to. They don't charge a fee.
Sure.
I had no idea what I was getting. I was, basically misled. And so that's what we hope with the app. It's going to give you that confidence. Like, there's no veteran teams available. You can try provisional, but you know what you're getting before they come out there.
We're going to do some questions here shortly from the live audience. But before we do that, kind of along the hunting beast tactics theme, I'd like to ask you two final questions here, Shane, and then Dan, if you got any, feel free to jump in. But I'd like to, on these longer marginal hits, where a deer's got time to get to maybe a place that it would prefer, have you noticed any patterns with either terrain or vegetation where these bucks would prefer to hole up? And then the last question would be, how often do you see deer circle back and or J-hook into areas near, not exactly where, but near where they were shot on these longer tracks?
So I'll probably answer both with this one long statement.
Okay.
Deer, after they're initially shot, they go off, and they take off running. And once they establish the direction, they're 50 yards from wherever you shot them, and say it's a mortally wounded deer, they'll die in that general direction, 200, 300 yards. You don't have to, they're not going to make a big loop, whatever. They're running for their life. They're dying. Deer that are gut shot, liver shot, like we mentioned earlier, they're going to sprint hard real quick, and then they stop, they look around, they start feeling sick, and, they hunch up and they start salivating, and they'll walk off and they'll bed down pretty quick. They're not really thinking about, their back trail and looking around. They're just going to find somewhere to lay down. They could be anywhere. It could be in cover, it could be out of cover. They just want to lay down somewhere because they don't feel good. The deer that are bumped, or the deer that feel like something's following them, they will. I've seen it enough where they will circle around and kind of lay down and watch their back trail. They won't necessarily lay right on the trail, but they'll circle up and get maybe a vantage point and watch their back trail. So if you do go tracking too soon and bump your deer, the next time you find that deer, say you find it dead because you backed out and waited, pay attention to how the deer is laying. It's probably, you find it dead with its legs folded underneath it, and you can tell that it died bedded up, and which way it's facing. You'll probably notice that it was watching its back trail. And then the deer that live several days, a lot of times those are the deer that, when people talk about injured deer go to water, that's the deer that usually go to water. By the end, they're starting to feel dehydrated. They're starting to feel, maybe hot or whatever they need to cool down. Deer that live less than 12 hours don't go to water. We find, I was on a podcast last night, actually, and we were discussing this. In Minnesota and Wisconsin, there's 30 to 32% surface area water. So you would think statistically that you should find at least 30 to 32% of the dead deer just randomly by chance near water. But the deer we find like 1 or 2% of deer that we recover within 50% of water, 50 yards of water. So only that small amount. They're not going to water to a great degree. And those are, some of those recoveries are deer that lived a couple of days. So if you just took the deer that lived less than 12 hours, it would probably be like 0.1%, so don't go searching near water. But to your original question, yeah, I see it at deer that live longer. They start thinking about their survival. Sometimes they watch the back trail. They may head to preferred bedding, and that's where they'll end up, dying later.
And I lied. One more question, because I think it's always good to hear from someone that's an experienced tracker on this. I think personally, because I've read some dog tracking books. I had a German Shepherd for a while and was getting into it. That was a long time ago. But talk to me about moisture, because I think there's a lot of myths around moisture and its effects on scent. So give me your thoughts, and you can talk about tracking specifically, but also maybe like when to check your trail cameras and stuff. Like what conditions am I going to leave the least amount of scent?
Yeah. So here's the things that hurt scent is low humidity when it's really dry, sandy soil, pine forest with pine needles. I don't know if it's the acid or the acidity of that. Pine trees or all the pine needles on the ground. That's very hard for a dog to track in. Sunlight destroys scent molecules. High winds blow it around. So if I was gonna, and the moisture is a good thing. Like the song says, rain is a good thing. And it doesn't hurt until you get like torrential downpours for like a solid day, a lot of rain. You can have an inch of rain or less and the dog still track it. Or you can have snow cover and the dog will track the deer in the snow when you can't see any blood. If you were going to go check your trail camera, middle of the day when it's hot and sunny and it's very dry and very windy, the scent won't stand a chance. Go check it then and then get out of there.
I appreciate that, because you hear so many people say, and you did mention specifically torrential downpour, and I'd agree with that too. But I think a lot of people overlook dry and windy, so I wanted to hear that from you, and I thought that was probably going to be your answer. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Dan, anything before we jump into the live Q&A?
The only thing I would say is it took me a long time to come to the exact same conclusion you have. I mean, years ago, if you followed my stuff, I would talk about, scouting in the rain or before rain and stuff. And I learned that through trackers and stuff about the tracking. I think the wind really dissipates your scent the most. But obviously you get a firsthand view with the dog behind that dog. You get to learn a lot. I admire that.
Yeah, one of our early recoveries, early on in my, I guess the first or second season I was tracking, I was called to track a deer that was shot in a bean field, and the beans weren't very tall. It was like drought conditions. We hadn't had much rain. It was 24 hours after he shot the deer. I wasn't very hopeful that my dog would be able to track it very well in that stuff. We hadn't even had a recovery that old yet. It was 26 hours actually. But right when I arrived, it started drizzling rain, and just enough to get the ground damp and the vegetation damp. And I can tell my dog the difference between a hot track and a cold track. A hot track is the deer just came through here within the last hour or two, and she pulls hard and she barks a little bit. On a cold track, when there's, it's old, 30 hours old or whatever, she's just got her nose to the ground and walking and sniffing. She's trying to pick up those fuel molecules that are left. Anyway, so we got her on the track, and that little bit of moisture, man. This is 26 hours old, and she was barking and pulling, and she took me straight to a property line. And I radioed to the guy, said, I hit a property line, I'm bringing her back. He said, oh, we can track over there. We got permission. I said, okay, I'll restart her. If she takes me there again, I'll let her continue. She took me right to that property line, and she was barking and pulling. And another 300 yards, we came up on a little pond. She sniffed along the surface of the pond. I think she could smell the molecules of the scent right on the surface. And she's just, you can hear her nose clicking. And then she comes up the other side, and there was, on the side of oak tree, there was the buck laying there dead. She went straight to it. And that little bit of moisture really helped. And like I said, it has to be a lot of rain. If you get like a half inch, quarter inch of rain, half inch of rain, dog's still tracking it. The scent molecules aren't going anywhere. They're going to stay right there. stick to stuff.
So, I mean, just so I didn't misunderstand this, you're saying that it was an older scent trail and it was kind of dissipated, but then when it started to rain, the dampness brought the scent back out?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
it invigorated the scent trail for the dog. So imagine your dog, if you have a dog and they're dry and you're petting them, whatever, and they go out and use the bathroom in the yard and they come back in when it's been raining. Now you can smell them from 10 yards away. It's just really invigorated that scent. I think that's the only thing I can think of a good analogy for a dog. I mean, when it's dry, she's just slowly sniffing, and then when there's a lot of moisture, she's like, I got to go get it. And she loves deer. She loves eating deer. I give her venison all the time for a treat. I give her deer legs. She eats the bone, hide, and the hooves and all. There's nothing left after about an hour. She's tearing it up, breaking the bones open, getting the marrow. So she loves deer. And when she smells that she's getting close to a deer, she's really pulling to try and get me there.
And this is just off the cuff, and I'm not a scent expert, but it makes me wonder, whenever a deer is trying to wind you, not whenever, but a lot of times you see them lick their nose, or like when a buck's rutting, he's licking his nose, it seems like that even that moisture helps him smell better.
Yeah, probably good point. Didn't think about that.
Let's get into questions here, Shane. First question is from MJ Outside. It says, how long is too long to wait to track?
I'm guessing he's saying that with a dog. Depends on the training of the dog. Myself, we've recovered deer 33 hours old. Tracks are 33 hours old. Some of the trackers I mentioned, that take 200 or 300 tracks a year. I know one fellow found a deer like 3 days later and it tracked right to the deer. It'd been buried by bobcats and grass and stuff.
Oh wow!
I've heard of deer being recovered up to like 5 or 6 days. Those are very rare. I would say though, your odds of getting a tracker to come take your track diminish quite a bit after 24 hours. When you start getting close to that 30-hour mark, there's going to be trackers that are not willing to come out there. Now, with that said, I'm thinking about a lot of us trackers in the Midwest where we work on tips or just do it for free and then you can tip us. Those trackers that charge you $250, $300, they may just come out there because they're going to get paid, and I don't want to make it like that's the way all trackers are, that they're charging money. Someone just want to cover their expenses. And they'll tell you, and a lot of trackers will do this. And I guess the majority of us we'll be realistic to you on the phone about our odds of recovery and let you make the decision. Look, do you still want me to come out? This is likely what you're going to see. We may not find your deer. And they a lot of times they'll say, just for the peace of mind, I want you to come on out. And okay, we'll come on out.
Next question's from Jim Funk. Says, do you find wounded deer, lethal or not, going into the wind, circling, and then going downwind? Do you find that much at all?
No, like I said earlier, typically once it gets shot and establishes a direction, and I'm talking about 40 or 50 yards from the hit site, now they've acquired a direction they want to travel. They stick to deer trails and they continue in the general direction they were running. They want to put as much distance between them and the threat. And doing a loop is not putting distance between you and the threat. So there are some occasions where they'll turn, maybe there's a barrier like a creek, a lake, a swamp, and that directs them. But if they just got woods to travel, they're going to follow deer trails and they're going to flee from you.
Dan, go ahead. I thought you were going to say something. I think I cut you off there.
Oh,
okay.
Next question.
Next question is from Mike Mariner. It says, Shane, are there any issues tracking on state or federal land?
Not that I've come across. No, I can't think of any. I guess it would have to be even the refuges, wildlife refuges and stuff. All you got to do is call your local, whoever the manager is of that area. But so far, I've been on federal properties and I've been on state properties. A lot of those federal properties are turned over to the state to manage, and you just follow the same rules. The dog's leashed, but you have to check per state. But in Wisconsin, I can track on a lot of these federal lands. Waterfowl production areas, those sort of things. No issue.
Oh, it's good to know. Jay Bizzle wants to know what kind of dog do you run? And I'm going to add on his question. What are some popular breeds?
So I have two dogs. One's a blue tick coonhound. She's my oldest veteran dog. She's going into her 8th season. And then I have a Boykin Spaniel that's going into his 2nd season. He hasn't tracked a whole lot. I've trained him a little bit. He's got some recoveries. He's very birdy. The dog was a gift from my daughter, and she wanted to train it to be a turkey dog, go over to Wisconsin and hunt turkeys with it in the fall. They scattered a flock. You can go Google the process. But after we got it, she decided she wanted to train it for deer tracking. And so that's the two dogs I have. Popular breeds, blackmouth curs seems to be a popular breed. Then the wire-haired Dachshunds, the Teckles, those are another little smaller dogs. They're a very popular breed. Bloodhounds, a lot of people have bloodhounds, and every one of them names their dog Copper or Cooper. Because I know, because I'm the one that vets these trackers. They sign up for the app, and I've gone through 1,700 names on there, and they'll put in their description or about me, my dog, and their name, and Cooper and Copper comes up every other dog.
That's great. I'm gonna alter this question a little bit. MJ outside wants to know, what's a good way to contact a tracker in your area? Well, we talked about the tracker app, so I want to ask you, where can people download that? And the other question is, if we have anybody that has a experienced tracking dog watching, how do people get registered to be a tracker on the app?
Okay, so you can go to Google Play or the App Store for Apple and download the app. You can go to gettracker.com, and we have links to the app to download. At the Google Play and the App Store. If you know someone in the area where you live that's a tracker, and a reliable person, just continue using them. But what I would say is, ask if they're on the app. And if they are, if you need their assistance, call them up and say, hey, I'm gonna put a submission through the app, and just offer your services, and I'll pick you as my tracker. It's free to do, but it helps us collect that analytical data for tracks. One thing we are doing this year, we're adding is the ability to manually submit tracking data. I don't know if we talked about that yet, but we're building into the app now to be available later this fall or this summer. The ability for trackers to manually submit tracking data for tracks they took outside the app, and hunters to go through there and submit tracking data for deer they didn't need a tracker on. And that's so we can get a balance of tracking data, some that was a dog and some that was manually submitted. So that helps us right there. If you don't have a tracker locally, you download the app, go ahead and create your profile. There's a weapons toolbox. You can put all the specifics about that. If you need a dog, you hit the request button, and you can just use the drop-down menu to select your weapon. It already has everything already filled out, and then you hit submit. It goes out to all the trackers in the area. They'll get a notification on their phone that this guy needs a tracker. We'll see the details, and then the trackers will offer their services. You may get 3 or 4 trackers that say, hey, I'm available, and then you can look at their fees, their ratings and review, because there's a ratings and review system on there. You can see their 5 stars, a lot of great feedback from other hunters, and so you kind of know what you're getting with a tracker, and then you can pick your tracker. What was the other question you asked? The other half?
Oh, geez, I forgot now. Dan, do you remember? What did I ask?
No.
Yeah. I don't know.
Just rewind it.
Yeah. Well, if somebody puts it in the chat, we'll get to it later. But
if somebody listening and remembers what you said, just ask it again.
Yeah, I got a short-term memory sometime. Jay Bizzle says septic deer, like a gut shot, intestine shot. Will the meat be safe? What's your experience with that?
I had this discussion recently with some friends, and I've never had a problem with gut shot deer. I've shot deer in the guts and all the deer I've shot through my life. And what I tell people is just, rinse out the chest cavity when you field dressing it. Most of the meat inside the chest cavity, you're not going to eat. It's got a membrane there. You're eating the meat on the outside of the rib cage. It should be fine. Just rinse it off with water. But if it looks and smells weird, obviously don't eat it. But I've never heard of anybody having an issue with a deer that's gut shot affecting the meat. It's, you know, I know what he's saying, that deer go septic, but like I explained earlier, it's the immune system, the white blood cells attacking the organs that kills the deer. It's not like, you know, there's cyanide flowing through the blood vessels of the deer. You know, it's just white blood cells.
Right, stuff that was there anyways to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Oleg Chernenko says, Shane, thank you for helping me out last year. After my experience, I finally gave in to my kids and got a dog. Can you please tell me at what age should I start training the dog to track?
Immediately. I mean, I started training Callie at 8 weeks when I got her. And transition, as soon as they start getting it, like I trained her, I just drug a piece of deer liver or beef liver through the yard, teaching her commands of, you know, point to the ground and find it. As soon as I decided she knew what she was doing as far as that's real easy. I drug a little piece of deer hide and then a deer leg. But as soon as they're getting that leaves a lot of scent on the ground. Start using a deer hoof, maybe get some tracking shoes that you use for training dogs. The deer hoof clamps to the back of the shoes, and you just walk it like a deer walking. And then you can use blood, like beef blood or any kind of blood, and just, you know, an ounce or two, just drip some drops, and then eventually work away from blood altogether and just use the deer hooves. But use deer hooves from deer that were shot and ran off, because they release all those other pheromones and odors of a wounded deer, and the dog's going to learn to key in on that deer, on that odor. Because if you got, say, 5 or 6 deer together and someone shot that one of the deer, if the dog is not keying in on the wounded deer smell, he's just going to follow any of those deer. The dog needs to be able to figure out which deer is wounded, and then he'll use she will use the interdigital gland scent, and that's like a fingerprint to each deer, to continue tracking that deer until they recover it. So the sooner you can get to that, the better. So that's start training now. Short answer.
And
I would think that a really experienced dog probably smells an individual deer, even if it's not bleeding.
Oh yeah, they do. I mean, that every deer, like when they visit a scrape or whatever, and another deer smells it walking, they know which deer that is. But what it helps with the dog is, say the deer is, you know, the deer is wounded, it's releasing those wounded odors. Then you got the interdigital gland. The dog can figure out, okay, this is a deer that's wounded. I have his scent fingerprint is and so even when you get somebody out there grid searching, has kind of gotten some blood over here or whatever, the dog will, as they get older and more experienced, will figure out, like, yeah, that's not where the deer went. I smelled over there, but I'm smelling the interdigital gland going this way, and, you know, a little bit of wounded deer this way. I don't know what goes through their heads, but the more experienced dogs, they're certainly getting brighter, and they're figuring things out. You can see it when they work things out. Like my dog will get to a spot where there's multiple trails, and she's struggling a little bit, and then she'll just go down that trail, you know, 5 yards, pop her head up, come right back. And she's like, nope, it didn't go that way. She's checking trails, you know, and then she finally says, oh, okay, here, I smelled it again, went down this trail. So.
Oh,
anybody figured out that?
Oh, sorry, lost you just for a second.
I quit talking. I thought y'all were just waiting.
Yeah.
Anybody figure out that question that was earlier, the second half?
Oh, let me scroll down and look. We'll do one
bothered
more.
Me because I feel like it was something I thought it was a good question.
I'm going to scroll down and look, but I've been going in order. So I'll ask you this one and then I'll look for it. Andy P says, Tracker's a really cool app and makes the process of finding a good tracker much easier. Any big changes planned for the app this year? You did mention drones. I'm curious, is that going to be all thermal stuff, or talk to me about the drones and I'll look for that other question real quick.
There's a lot of big features that we have planned. The biggest one is the analytics. We're adding the drones also, and a lot of concern people have with the drones is, you know, they promote a high recovery rate, which is not true. Like they have like 70 or 80 or 90% recovery rate. What their rate is coming from is that they spotted a deer from the air, and it may have been the deer they were looking for, or it possibly could have been another one. But what the app is going to do, hopefully, is get more realistic recovery rates, because I think there's some pros and cons to each. I'm not against drones at all. I think they're a great tool, But what we're going to see though is did the hunter, was he able to actually tag the deer? Was he able to put it on the tailgate? Not that you just found it in the air. That's a recovery. Once you are able to tag that deer, that's a recovery, what we consider recovery. We're going to see those rates come back down to 30 or 40, 35, 40%, just like a dog. Now they may spot a dead deer on the neighbors. And so there's some advantages to that where the neighbor may not let us track with the dog, and they, but we're hoping that brings in some more, credibility to the drones and really gives some accurate answers. And then the main thing is to give people an opportunity to hire drones in one location if they would rather use a drone than a dog. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't want dogs in their property, like I mentioned earlier, and they would rather use a drone. There's instances where a drone might be much better. Like where I live here in the metro, all these cut up properties, you try going through a neighborhood over fence, if you can take off a drone and just check and see that, oh, there's my buck laying in the backyard, I'll go knock on that one house door. I don't have to ask 20 neighbors, 5-acre plots here and there. But anyway, the big addition, there's Callie. She's missing on the podcast. The big addition is the analytics. So if you go on the app now, you subscribe, there's some basic analytics like a doe or buck or what I shoot it with. I can't remember. There's not a whole lot there. But we have a lot of data. We just don't have a way to present it right now because it costs money to build this stuff. But we're expanding the analytics so where you'll have like 20 plus filters.
Okay.
The date the deer was the animal was shot. What kind of animal? What state was it in? A date range. Maybe I'm looking at all the bucks shot in the first week of September versus all the bucks shot the first week of November. I want to see recovery rates for that. You can break it down to the compound or a crossbow with a specific draw weight range, an arrow weight range, a broadhead, a manufacturer broadhead, a brand of broadhead. You can save presets and then compare another exact same setup, but just change the broadhead and see what the recovery rates. There's heat maps on the deer that show, where we're having what locations a deer hit had the highest recovery rate or pass-through rate. We're already seeing that on the heat map we have now. We had a local school work with the data, some high schoolers. The heat map shows the blue is lower recovery rate and the red is hotter, higher recovery rate. You could see the shape of the leg bone and shoulder in that heat map. Really? And those were spots where they weren't getting recoveries because the arrow was hitting there and stopping, no pass through. And then you were seeing oranges and red as you got back to the back of the deer where your guts and livers, because those are high recovery spots. And so as we get more and more data, I'm excited about that part of it because I want to see it personally. I have the data. I just don't know how to, I'm not going to spend days trying to thumb through it when a program will do it for me. Sure. So I'm excited to see that. A couple of other things. The other thing we're adding is the ability for hunters and trackers to manually submit data. And that'll also be in the analytics where you can filter that out. You can say, I want to just see the organically obtained data through the app, or I just want to see the data that was manually submitted, or I want to see both and compare them and see if I'm seeing the same trends. Trackers will be able to have their own personal analytics. They can choose, just show me data from tracks that I collected. Hunters will be able to see the same thing. Just show me tracks that I manually submitted. You may go through there and submit 100 deer you shot in your lifetime. All the details, maybe you kept a journal. On the flip side, we have to worry about fraud. So I guarantee you people are thinking about it right now. What if a broadhead company or an ammo company decides to pay a bunch of employees just to submit a bunch of manual tracks and make their product look good? We're going to have safeguards to prevent that from happening. So the manually submitted data should be sound. That's a few of the things we're going to add.
No, that's all good information. And I was curious earlier on when you mentioned the manual input, I was like, you kind of worry about the integrity of the data there, but that's good to hear that you guys have some processes in place to vet that. Real quick, William Ritchie said your membership join isn't working. So William, the most likely cause for that, and this is a YouTube problem, not a hunting beast problem, is if you're using an iOS device, specifically an iPhone or an iPad, the join option on Dan's page does not appear. So you have to do it either from a desktop PC or an Android device. So if you're trying to find the join button and you can't, it's probably because you're on an Apple product, and that's something that YouTube has not resolved yet. So check out the desktop. Yeah, go Android. That's right. Select Hunts asks Shane, how much should you tip someone when you call them to come track a deer with their dog?
I'd say you're not going to hurt any tracker's feeling if you give them 50 or $60. A good round number is $100, and that seems to be kind of the consensus. That question comes up often, and we get tipped. I've gotten tipped, $200 or $300. I've gotten tipped so big that I had to give some of it back. I was like, man, this is way too much for what I did. I've been offered $1,000 to come to Iowa and track. But a good tip, if you're close to that $100 mark, that covers, especially today's fuel costs. Covers our fuel, and I can get a bite to eat, and then I can buy the dog a treat.
Seems like a good round number.
I think when I had a tracker over and helped me, I gave him $200. He wouldn't take it. He gave it back to me. He insisted he wouldn't take it, but I felt like he put the hours he put in, the time he put in.
Was that wasn't Al Sherman, was it?
No.
Okay, because he's a tracker in Wisconsin. He refuses to accept anything. Now, if you offer him maple syrup, he'll take that, but he will not take a dime. You cannot give him any money.
I'm so bad with names. I should know the guy's name. He's a good friend. But I'm tipping my tongue for some reason.
Was it Scott Gagliano, Dan?
Yes, it was. It was Scott.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember now.
But you put that, you come over, you put the time in. You're going away from something you're doing. It's hunting season. You guys hunt. You're helping out, and I took him through swamp, water, nasty, mile back, and he wants to wait for the right timing. I mean, I put him out of his way quite a bit, but like you said, these guys just love to do it. And
I don't know
Scott was a great guy.
I don't know if I could track for you, Dan, because I know that it's going to be hell getting back to wherever you shot a deer.
Well, you know how to swim, right? I always wonder about those little dogs because where I go, but
that's how I ended up with a coon hound, because when I was getting into it, a lot of people were using those tackles and stuff, and I'm like, I live in an area of Minnesota. There's a lot of marshes and stuff. What happens? The deer crosses one of those cattail marshes, and the dog, you got to track it. Dog can't swim, a half mile through a cattail marsh. Oh, we just pick it up and go to the other side. I'm like, no, I want the dog to lead me to exactly where that. So I got a long-legged, coon hound.
Some of the deer I shoot never come out of water. They're in there the whole time.
Yeah.
Buckslayer asks, lighted knocks help see where your hit was. In Shane's opinion, what's the best lighted knock out right now?
Oh, I can't remember. I just bought some that I really like. I've been using, is it Nocturnal? I've been using those for years, but I think if they got sold or something changed, their knocks, in my opinion, are crap right now. They're breaking left and right. They're just not reliable. I wonder if some big company bought them and now they're trying to save $1 or $2. But gosh, I can't think off the top of my head. I just bought some the other week and was trying them
Luminox, Fire Knock. There's a bunch.
No, I don't like Luminox. I've tried those out. I don't like the fact that the little metal wire has to touch the carbon arrow, and I've had some issues with it not making great contact. I like ones where the one I bought is like a Nocturnal, but it has like a little metal button sticking out. You just like a little switch. You just flick on and off on the outside.
Oh, I've seen that one. Seen it. I don't know what it's called.
I've
seen it.
I don't have to stick the tip of a broadhead in the hole to pop it up like a Nocturnal. And so far I like them. They seem to be robust, and every shot, when I'm practicing, I practice with the lighted knocks, and I don't like them being on when I'm at draw. So the Nocturnals, I always hated having to fit something in that little hole to turn off. This time I can take my fingernail and just flick the switch. I don't like that bright light glowing in my eyes when I'm trying to practice. But I shoot with the exact setup that I'm going to hunt with, other than the broadhead. Then I'll shoot my broadhead a few times before I go hunting. But I try to keep everything I'm shooting when I'm hunting.
I'm looking at Google here. Was it lit or raised knocks by chance?
That doesn't sound familiar.
All right. Well, there's so many options.
Yeah, I can probably find it for you. I don't know. I can make a call. I bought it at Bawana Archery here in Little Canada, Minnesota. They had it. It's a new arrival they had, fairly new knock.
Well, if it's the one with the switch on the side, like a nocturnal, people should be able to find it. Hunt 1969 says, how long does it take to train a dog to track?
Let's see. I mean, in a few months, they got it enough where they could probably recover a deer. I think the training never really ends. I got Callie in, let's see, I'm trying to think, her birthday's in September. It was late it was already in deer season, and we're talking about close to November when I got her. And so she was a year old by her first deer season, and that was, she was ready. She had a year of training under her belt. But a few months old, and dog can go out there. But what they're going to do is their nose has the capability of tracking a deer from the time they're born. It's their brain doesn't have the computational power, or hasn't figured it all out. Like, what does this scent mean? So you're training their brain to figure out what their nose is smelling, and so that even a year-old dog out there in their first season, she was good at her first season. We found a lot of deer, but they just keep getting better and better. They start figuring out those back tracks. They start figuring, things out on their own. I don't have to point to the ground, after the third season or second season. I could walk it to a hit site, and she starts sniffing around. She knows, what to do. I didn't even have to give her a command. So, a few months, you got a dog, but obviously you're just going to keep working with them, and they're just going to get better and better. They hit their prime. I'll say this real quick. Dogs typically seem to hit their prime, and what I've been told is about 5 or 6, 7 years old. That's when they're really their best.
Okay.
That question brings up a interesting point. So say this guy wants to train a dog to find his own deer. I wonder how practical that is, because how many deer is the dog going to get to track? Versus the training and stuff. I mean, if a guy's going to track one dog, one or two deer a year, maybe 5, I don't think that dog's going to get the adequate training to be a top-notch dog.
No, it won't be.
But that's my opinion. You know better than I would. What's your opinion? Is a guy training one for himself? Does that sound right?
I mean, they may find a deer or two, but if you're not getting, and that's my issue with my dog, I can already see, I don't get the repetition, the time to train with her like I should. But she's also smart enough. She's figured out the fake tracks. I should recreate them, but a dog needs the repetition, needs the to do it and more often, not just like with anything. If you practice, sports, basketball, baseball, if you're just someone that casually practices, you're not going to be nearly as good as someone's out there spending every day of the week practicing. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so my dog, when I go on a real track, the phone rings. I'm in my truck traveling to the track, talking to a person on the phone. We usually meet up at a store or something. The person walks up to the truck, and then I follow their vehicle to some property, and we get out, and there's me and my dog and the hunter. Well, my dog has learned that if she doesn't see all that happen, that it's a fake track, because I take her on these practice tracks in the summer. I'm like, all right, girl, let's go. And I won't say the key word right now because she's in here and she'll go nuts if I say the key word or going on a track. I'll load her up. We'll pull up to a property. I'll get out, put her lead on her, and I'll say, find it. And she starts falling. Then she's like, I don't want to do this. And she gives up on it. She knows the only thing going to be at the end is a deer leg. So she's looking for that whole thing put together. So it's not that I don't have as much time to practice with her in off season as I should, but also she doesn't want to do it. She wants to track real deer. So if I could have somebody walk up to me and act like they're a hunter, we follow them, then she may actually track those practice tracks.
Well, so one other question I have is that, like with me and Scott Gigliano, I have a lot of trust in Scott, with my spots and stuff. And I hear a lot of mumbling when I talk to people about tracking, that they're worried about bringing in a tracker they don't know into an area that they think is their little secret or something, especially with public land and stuff. You got any thoughts on that?
I would say the vast majority, I mean, like high 90-something% of them do not care about your hunting spot. And a lot of them don't even track anymore. Most trackers have given up hunting and track. That's all they do. If you're worried, if you have any inclination, that they may come in there later, if it's a good spot, just hire a tracker that doesn't hunt anymore or doesn't hunt at all. You can ask them that.
Yeah. Is that something I guess, is there, this is something I'm curious, is there like a direct messaging feature built into the app? So let's say you said I might get 3 people that respond to the track. Can I message each of them individually? And maybe that's one of the questions I could ask them if they're an active.
Well, no. And we used to have a direct connect when the app first came out. Whereas when you submitted a request, the trackers could see your phone number and the hunter's phone number and everything. And then if you offered your services, they could see your number, but it got exploited as soon as we launched the app. People would see the number, they would call the hunter directly and never use the app again. They're just like, okay, I'll be there later. Or they would screenshot it and say, hey, and they post on social media, hey, I'm not available to take this track. It just came into the app, but here's the guy's number. Now he's going to end up with an unvetted tracker outside the app. So what happens is you submit your request. As a tracker, I see the hunter's name, their location, the details of it. And some people are actually Googling the people's name and still trying to find it that way, but it's knocked down a lot of the direct contact. You decide, you should know right away whether you're available for the track or not, and you just offer your services. At that point, now you can see the contact information. Once you offer to take the services, the hunter sees your contact, he can accept you. Then you can communicate. Now, let's say after you communicate, you don't like this tracker anymore. You can reject his offer. You can, and the tracker can do the same. You talk to the hunter. You decided, okay, it's not going to work out. The timeline's not. I think we should give this deer more time. I got to work tomorrow. You probably should find another tracker. They can rescind their offer to track. The hunter can reject their offer. That tracking request goes back live out to all the trackers and sends another notification. Hey, this track's available again. And then like the other trackers, if they had already applied the first time, they can offer their service or take that track now that they've turned down the other one. But once you both clicked on it and agreed, then the phone numbers become visible, and you can make contact that way. We do plan to at some point build in a messaging system where you can message each other, and it'll prevent phone numbers. It won't allow digits or something. Some way of messaging. It's a shame you had to get to that, but people have to understand, and there's going to be some complainers out there. This is totally free for hunters and trackers to use, and we're doing our best to raise revenue to pay for it and keep it free as long as we can. Just abide by the process. We need the tracking data. That's how we're going to sell the subscriptions to help pay for the app. We're not trying to get rich off of it, but it costs an enormous amount of money. If anybody's ever messed with an app or building one, you know how expensive it can be. And I don't want to keep hitting that point, but it is vital, and we need people to use the app in the way it's intended.
Sure. We're going to do one more, but before we do that, I want to say this has been very insightful for me. Definitely learned a lot. So Shane, appreciate you coming on, taking the time. Definitely enjoy your YouTube channel. One more time for us, why don't you give us your website, the YouTube, and where people can find the tracker app?
Well, if you go to ShaneSimpsonHunting.com, you can find links to all those, the tracker app and my YouTube channel and all that. My YouTube channel is Shane Simpson Hunting, or if you just want to go directly to the tracker website, it's gettracker.com, GETTRAKR.com.
Awesome. Dan, anything to say before I ask this last question here?
No, just great to have you on, Shane. Looking forward to running into you in September.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
And last question, and forgive me, I wrote it down here, but I forgot who asked it, so apologies to that, is knowing what you know geez, if I could talk, knowing what you know about scent and tracking, what are your thoughts on scent control, like scent lock and sprays, etc.?
I used it when I was younger. I would bathe, I put my clothes in a pine needle box, and I wash my clothes in baking soda and stuff. And I quit all that just because it was not worth the effort. I didn't think it was worth the time and money. And I always try to play the wind the best I can. I still think that it does no good. The ability of a dog tracking, the ability of a deer. People say that, well, it may knock your scent down enough where the deer thinks you're 200 yards away instead of 20. I think if they smell it, they know how far away you are. They can tell, one molecule versus 10 molecules. I guess the freshness of it. They know how close you are. I don't think it's the count of molecules or the concentration that tells them distance. I think they just know that you're there, and I don't think it really helps.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again for coming on. And I just want to give a quick shout out. We had a ton of Beast members in the chat tonight. Too many to name individually, but thanks everybody that's a member, and thanks everybody that watched. Shane, thanks again. And we'll be back next week, same time, same place, 7 Central next Tuesday. Thanks everybody.
Thanks.